What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of Arena Goat Talk. I'm your host, EJ Burt. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And on this episode, I have a special guest who is the GOAT of mascots, Mr. Alan Duckworth. How you doing today, sir?
Doing good. How about you, Coach?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. I appreciate you coming on, and definitely think you're the best in the business. And I want people to know your story. So I guess in your words, just kind of introduce yourself.
Well, I'll start by saying we kind of brought this whole thing together in the last part of the '93 season. I was actually me and a friend of mine. We were training a stunt team, and part of the stunt team was doing rappels at the arena for the Predator games. And I'd never been to a Predator game, and so I'm like, okay, I'll come and pull ropes with you guys and see what it's all about, because my younger brother was a season ticket holder since '91. So yeah, I'm busy making mascots and doing commercials and working on films and different things, and so this was kind of like, okay, well, we'll see what it's all about and have some fun. And while I was pulling those ropes from the catwalks way up, 150 feet above the arena floor, we did that. We went down, started to watch the game, and I'm just like, this game's crazy. It's fun. It's the fans are rowdy. It's super fast and a very very aggressive game. And I looked around and I just thought to myself, well, this is really cool. Why don't they have a mascot? It's the Orlando Predators, for crying out loud. They got to have something cool. So when the season was over, this was a playoff game, I believe, between Preds and the Rattlers at the time. And so when the season was over, we started to go into negotiations and talks about building a mascot. And so that's kind of where our story with the Predators starts. And so, coming all the way up into the season of '94, we were literally less than a week away from opening game, the exhibition game between the Predators and I believe it was Tampa in Daytona Beach, of all places, in their arena over there. So here we are about to introduce Klaw to a bunch of fans who, for the most part, had never heard about arena football. They were Daytona Beach people. So here we are over there. And one of our sponsors was a motorcycle company. It was a Harley Davidson company in Daytona. And we were discussing how we were going to introduce Klaw. And at one point, it was like, okay, can you ride a motorcycle? I said, yeah, I've been riding motorcycles since I was a teenager. So, Klaw was going to ride in on a Harley. But the owners of the company were like, nah, we would rather have our guy do it. And I'm like, oh, gosh, what? Okay, so what happens now? So here they're wanting me to ride on the back of this Harley with this guy. And I'm thinking, I don't know. There's a term for riding on the back of a Harley motorcycle.
Use your imagination.
If you pardon the phrase, riding bitch. And I'm like, I can't do this. Klaw can't be introduced for the first time riding on the back of a motorcycle, holding on to another guy. That ain't gonna happen. Oh, literally like 10 seconds before this guy is supposed to drive me out onto the field, the seat that I was sitting on that had a suction cup on it on the back fender fell off. So there's no seat. I'm wearing those nice, slick football pants. I'm sliding all over the place. I'm not wrapping my hands around this dude. Ain't no way. Ain't going to happen. So what I did was I put my hands on his shoulders, and we got right into the end zone. And then I hopped off, and I ran right up to the sidewall and jumped in the stands with the fans. And that was how the whole thing started. And from then on, it was like, Klaw was there for the fans. He's in the stands with the fans. I was not going to be that kind of mascot that stood in the end zones like all the NFL guys do. I wanted to be out there and be a part of the party. And that's really kind of how he started and how it kind of stuck that way.
How,
So,
how
you know,
did you feel? Like the I guess the crowd's reception of you when you first revealed, Klaw.
the perception was, I mean, I was kind of shocked, quite honestly, because the response was really good. I mean, when I designed him, there was a time here during its inception when I was building it, I was thinking, okay, these fans are really rowdy. They're a party crowd. So I got to kind of protect myself from them first, you know? So I wanted this thing to be kind of part Power Ranger, part Predator, part football player, and part Road Warrior. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why, Claw got the external pads, kind of like Mad Max kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. The boots,
Right.
it was kind of the same thing. Motocross boots, Mad Max. That was my little nod to that. And then, all of the body armor and everything kind of lent itself to like superhero Power Rangers. That's why, Claw was one of the few mascots out there. I'm talking, it sounds so weird talking to myself like that, almost like third person. But Claw was one of the very few mascots that spoke to fans.
Mm-hmm.
I broke that rule, and everybody else was like, "Oh my gosh, mascots aren't supposed to talk." Okay, you know what my argument was? Big Bird talks, Power Rangers talk, Barney talks. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
big list that people seem to forget. And the thing was, is when I designed Claw, I wanted to make sure, no matter what, that I didn't frighten children because Claw is not cute and fuzzy by any stretch of the imagination. He
Mm-hmm.
has the attitude and the swagger that the Predators expected and the fans wanted. But I
Mm-hmm.
also didn't want to frighten children. So that's why I spoke. I would actually change the timbre of my voice depending on
Mm-hmm.
who I was talking to. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of endeared the mascot even more to the fans at that point because I can interact more with them.
Yeah, I remember when you came out to my youth sports programs and everything. The kids were like looking at you, didn't know what to expect. They didn't know how to react, but they were curious. So they're
Well, that was the thing.
following
Yeah.
you around, just staring, like I don't know, like you're about to do something, but they didn't know what, but they wanted to see it.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the fun of the early Predators too, because the pyro was such a big part of the Predator game in the 90s. I mean, pyro was so strong that, for the first couple of quarters, there was still smoke in the arena. They couldn't get it all out in by the half. So the fans loved the pyro. They loved the loud rock and roll music. And now they had a mascot that can identify with the team and the fans. So it was a win-win all the way around as far as I was concerned there. It was kind of a social experiment up until that point
Hmm.
because I'd been building mascots for other clients for several years because I was a head designer for a costume shop on Fairbanks Avenue. And I'd been there since, I guess, about 79, 80.
Hmm.
So we were trying to figure out a way to keep me employed. So we came up with the idea of building mascots. And we had been doing it for a few years up until that point. So leading up to the Predators, nobody was aware of the fact that I had been working. I was doing backstage pyro for Ozzy. I was, doing commercials on a national level, and I was working on films. For instance, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which I built the eagle that he beats up at the end of the movie. So we were doing all of those things before we even got to the Predators.
Hmm.
So when ownership found out that there was a guy wearing the mascot costume that had done all of these other things, they were a little surprised and taken aback by it.
Hmm.
Uh, and I was like, well, this is I mean, this is a cool gig, but I have a real job. I was out there making a living doing, whatever I could as an effects artist.
Hmm.
So, what really charged me up was in the late 70s. I was a caricature artist out at the theme parks. So there was a theme park called Circus World, and I spent a lot of time out at Circus World drawing caricatures. Uh, I did it there. I did it at Gatorland, a bunch of different places. And then I saw Star Wars, and I'm like, I want to do that stuff. That's
Hmm.
what I want to learn how to do. And in Orlando, there was none of that going on. So I physically had to go out of my way to learn it. and teach myself how to sculpt and make molds and do all of those things, which eventually all led up to building mascots for for a living. But doing it kind of flip flopped. So I was kind of like doing this stuff, and then I was building mascots. Then I came back to doing the other stuff every now and again. So it was just in between kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 hours a day, I built mascots, and then I'd come home to my home studio and work on the TV show Superboy, which was shot out at Universal. I was on that for 3 seasons. I was building kryptonite and exploding bodies and laser weapons and all kinds of things. Whatever they could come up with that week, they'd call me up and say, "Can you make this for me? Can you make that for me?" And so, yeah, it was a challenge because I'm doing that, and now we're doing the Predator thing. So, Friday nights, Saturday nights, I'm in a costume, running around, firing pyro, riding motorcycles onto the field, and doing all of the fun stuff. So the way I looked at the Predators at that point was kind of like Friday night out with the guys playing softball. You know, it was just that was my getaway, my release from the week's work and that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a lot of fun. And the fans made it, that much more fun.
Mm-hmm. So I guess kind of speak on some of the most memorable moments that you can think of as Klaw.
Well, I tell you, one of them was it was kind of interesting. Claw temporarily lost his job. Okay, there was a time when ownership and I just kind of came to an impasse during the season 2000 season, and Claw was not there for 3 games. Now I was, and the funny part is the fans were all coming up to me during the game and go, "Why aren't you out on the field? Why aren't you in costume?" And I was like, "Well, this is what's going on." And they tried to introduce a new mascot, which the fans absolutely hated. They threw beer at that poor guy. It was just really bad. So finally, we were coming up to our next home game, which was with Tampa, and that is the war on I-4. That's the big deal. And without Claw there, they felt like this just wasn't going to work. So we came to an agreement, and I told them, look, okay, you have the breaks in the quarters for commercials or whatever, and so during this second break, Claw was going to reemerge. And I told them, okay, you fill the tunnel up with fog, and they introduced the other mascot, which by the way was there for 3 games, really didn't have a name. So he comes out at the other end of the end zone, the opposite end, and I had them fill the tunnel up with fog, and I had them play. You remember the movie Major League?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had ownership play Wild Thing for me, and I come running out, and when I did, it was like a standing ovation. I mean, everybody was on their feet. They were going crazy for that entire length of time in that break. I was stunned, absolutely stunned. I fired the pyro that I had in my staff at the other one. He ran off, and that was the last time you ever saw or heard of that thing. And that really cemented Claw's, stay there for the duration, for as long as it was going to last. Claw was going to stay there. But I don't, a mascot gets a standing O. It blew my mind. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to find the video footage of it. I know there is some, but that was really cool. Now, that being said, later on that year, we go to the playoffs. We get to the bowl, and here we are. I'm in the end zone. There's 3 seconds left. David Cool's about ready to kick the point that cements our championship, and I'm thinking to myself, this is really kind of cool. It's on my birthday. I'm standing in the end zone on my birthday, making my comeback, and he does this, and I'm like, how cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
It was a great moment for me personally, and it really it kind of it made me feel like the work that I did really meant something to the fans,
Mm-hmm.
and that they wanted me there for that long, and I stuck around as long as they wanted me, and I told them as long as I'll be Claw as long as the fans want me to be there, and as long as it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we outlasted. I mean, Think about it for a second. 94 to now present. Klaw has been me, and I have been Klaw. And if the team was to come back by some miracle, he's still here. He's still available.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? I mean, if I'm not physically capable, I've got a grandson that's just my size, and I'll just turn him into a next generation Klaw. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
still be there. I'll still be there to train him and do his thing, and we'll have another generation of Klaw if it happens. But
Mm-hmm.
it was fun. I mean, it was a fun run. There was a lot of crazy moments, a lot of moments I can't probably talk about. But I will say that Klaw was very popular with everybody, all genders, all races, all sizes. There was some really fun stuff in the 90s, and I don't know how far back you went. It's been a while since we've talked about when you first showed up, but there's guys that were on the
That
team.
was my first year.
Huh?
03 was my first year.
'03 was your first year. So you were on the field in '03 when that was all going down. But you weren't aware that I was there because I didn't exist yet in that sense. But wow, what I mean, 93, 94 was even crazy. I'm standing in the opposite end zone when the Hail Mary to Barry, Barry had it, but when he came down, he didn't. And we're like, and all of a sudden I feel somebody tap me on the shoulder. And it was the Fort Worth Calvary head coach. He
Mm-hmm.
goes, "You've got nothing to be disappointed about. You guys, man, you had an amazing run. I mean, that was literally almost an undefeated season for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to that one play. It was crazy. But for the other coaches to acknowledge what we were doing there as a team and as what we were delivering as far as the show for the fans, you saw those other coaches and other owners come from all over the country to see what we were doing so they could
Mm-hmm.
try to emulate what we were doing. I think we were really the first guys really making it the party that it was and what arena football has never really achieved since. I just never felt that vibe anywhere else. Even when I was watching on TV, it's like TV doesn't do justice to the Orlando Predators. They just didn't. They stayed on the field so much they didn't feel that energy that was going on in the stands, and
Mm-hmm.
and I got it. And you know what? When we weren't playing so good, guess who they were coming to and asking questions? They were like, "Why don't you get out there and why don't you take some snaps? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" And I'm like, "Come on, guys, I always wanted somebody to hit me when I was in the end zone just to see what would happen." But the fans were very protective of Klaw. There was one particular game. This guy came up and he owned a dojo in South Florida, and he brought his entire school there to see a Predator game. And he
Mm-hmm.
came up to me and he said, "Look, if you have any trouble, you let me know. We'll take care of it." And I'm like, "Wow, that's crazy that they were that protective." But Claw never. I'm not like those other mascots. What I call fuzzy butts. The fuzzy butts always had people with them to
Mm-hmm.
protect them or whatever. And I just felt like Claw was not that kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to have people to jump in front of him when somebody's giving him grief. Quite honestly, nobody really gave me grief. Look at Claw, for crying out loud. I mean, body armor, skulls, the whole thing. That's really the reason I did that, was to give it such an attitude that he wouldn't be approached like that. And even if somebody did, they'd end up hurting themselves.
Yeah.
I had so much armor on, it's not going to hurt me. Now, that being said, we were at a game, and Jay was our coach at the time, and John, his brother, John Gruden, would show up at games,
Mm-hmm.
and I was standing in the tunnel, and John Gruden and John Daly walk up, and I thought to myself, now here's a party. There's going to be a party here tonight, and so they walk up, and John comes right up to me, right in my face, and headbutts me. I got a helmet on. It ain't going to hurt me. John Gruden headbutts me and says, "Go get him, Claw." And I'm like, this is going to be a fun night. And it turned out to be a great night. And those guys, when you got NFL coaches coming to an arena football game
Mm-hmm.
and having a good time, and even John Daly, who's in an entirely different sport and on a whole different level. That guy, and he's coming there to have a good time. You know that the Predators are putting on a good show for everybody. So, I was quite proud to be a part of it, and in spite of all the weirdness that did happen, um, there were some weird times. There were some moments where I thought I was going to have to break up fights, get in between people. I do know for a fact that one couple who was married got divorced, and they fought over the season tickets.
Wow.
In their divorce, they fought over the season tickets. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's a Predator fan. They were diehard fans. And when Klaw was missing for those 3 games, I had another fan come up to me outside of the event, and he said, "We tore up our season tickets." And I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, if you're not there, we don't want to be there." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." I didn't have the heart to tell him that I might be able to come back. I don't know. But
Mhm.
they tore up their tickets. They were so upset. And
Wow.
that, and when you hear those stories, it's just like, wow, I didn't realize I had that kind of effect. I was a guy in a suit, running around in spandex that did, that certainly probably shouldn't have been running around in spandex, uh, but we had so much fun, and outside the event, uh, I got those responses. Whether it was at an arena bowl game out of town. We had one time the Tampa Bay Storm called me up personally and asked me if I would come and do an event during one of their breaks. And I said, well, sure. I mean, if my people are okay with it, I'll be happy to do it. They said, well, we want to do a tug of war during one of the breaks. We'll have your fan club and our mascot do a tug of war during one of the breaks. So about 5 minutes before that was supposed to happen, I was with the fan club and I said, look, I said, they don't want us to win this. They're going to load that line. They're going to get the biggest, fattest, heaviest people they can find, and they want to beat us. I said,
Mhm.
let's not do that. When they count 3, you give that rope a tug and drop it. And when they did, all their people fell. And I'm jumping up and down. I'm looking at our sideline, and Pat O'Hara, who was our,
Mhm.
quarterback at the time, he's wiping his face, and I saw this look on his face, and I'm like, uh-oh. I turned around, and one of the big guys was coming at me. And I'm going, what do I do now? I can't hit the guy. I don't want to hit this guy in front of all these fans. I mean, I'll be killed. So I did, that linebacker move. I just pushed up on him and I started moving backwards to take away his inertia. So
Uh-huh.
I'm not hurting the guy. So all of a sudden I feel more weight, and I look down, and one of our fan club guys is now wrapped around his legs. So I got 2 guys, and I'm like, how do I get away from this? So I literally just rolled around and rolled both of them to the ground, and then I got up and I'm like, whew, I'm still standing. I'm okay. I didn't hurt anybody, but the Tampa Bay Storm folks weren't happy with me, and they never invited me back. I don't know why. But I was not going to lose on their terms. I mean, that would not have been the Predator way of doing things. And our fans, them, they would go nuts. And
Mhm.
Tampa fans were just as crazy as our fans were
Yes, they were.
during during that great Arena Bowl where we doubled them up. When we doubled them up 62-31 and crushed that team, when I ran out with our guys, you could hear the hate. You could feel it. I mean, it was creepy. And I was in the opposite end zone because they told me not to go into the stands. They said, no, you're going to stay where your people are. I said, okay, I'm standing. I'm right there in the stands, or right by the stands in the end zone. And they were going off on me big time. I had my staff. I'd already fired it. And I'm looking up and I'm hearing this guy cussing at me. And I'm like, wow. And I look up and his son, 8 years old at most, was cussing too. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, Dad, come on. I mean, come on. Example, example, example. So I couldn't get him to shut up. So I took the staff and stuck it between my legs and pointed at him and just waved. And oh, that set the whole section off. They just hated that. It's like, wow, how much fun is this that everybody just gets so steamed up over a game and over a mascot of all things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what they didn't know is their mascot, Storm Guy. You remember Storm Guy? He had a human face and he had a helmet. I rebuilt that for them. They hired me to rebuild it because it had gotten stolen. It went missing out of their, I guess their room that they had him in during there was two concerts that had come after our games, and the one concert was Green Day, the other concert was Paul McCartney. So somewhere in between those two concerts, Storm Guy went missing, and I ended up rebuilding it for him. Now I would never tell the Predator fans that because they'd consider me a traitor, but that's what my job was, in building mascots and rebuilding them and whatever. So I tell people that every time I thought I'd seen it all at a Predator game, the next Predator game happens, and it's like, oh my goodness, something else happened. In the 90s, if we had cell phones, the Predator games would have been viral. Every single game.
Of course, get behind the team and all those moments definitely would have been viral moments.
Oh yes, I mean,
fake left, fake right.
Some of the stuff, I mean, that I dealt with. One particular instance was after we do the stuff on the floor opening game, I would go up to the top area where the handicap section was. So I'd go say hello to all the folks there first. And there was this young guy. He was sitting in a wheelchair. And I squatted down next to him, got some pictures taken with him, signed him some autographs. And when I started to get up, my suit's top heavy. It's heavier up top than it is at the bottom. So I just fell backwards like a turtle, And before I could get up, one of the fans of the female persuasion jumped on top of me. And she's like cowboy and rodeo, yeehaw. And I couldn't move. She was sitting on top of me. So I let her take her 8 seconds. She hopped off. And I roll over onto my stomach and push myself up, and I go, oh, there you go. That's another Predator game, another story. But those are the things that there was always something happening. And whether it's just autographs in weird places, or just flat out getting groped to the point where if that had ever happened to anybody during this whole woke thing, this whole Me Too thing, all of these, there would have been lawsuits flying everywhere, But the way I look at it is the fans are having a good time, and I'm part of that for them. If they come here to have a good time, and I come here to show them a good time, and I guess it's stuck because there's still people. I ran into a girl the last season that we were playing. They came up to get a picture with me, and she had told me that she had a picture with me as Klaw every season since she was 1 year old. So she's got pictures of me from the time she was 1 until she was like 20 something, close to 30. And I was just like, wow, those are the fans. And gosh, it would be great to have them back. If we could get those fans back, we would have no problems with arena football in Central Florida. I mean, they're multi-generational. And we had kids that were watching those games, grew up and became players on our team. That's nuts. And they would come and tell me that, and that's just wild to think that we had players that were fans to begin with and aspired to become Predator players. So yeah, I mean, it was great fun. I mean, it was a great ride. Everything we did was I felt like for the fans, as much as we could do, show them a good time, no matter what was going on behind the scenes or in the league or whatever, and then my regular day-to-day thing, just getting up and drawing and sketching and sculpting and mold making and gluing fur and doing everything that I've been doing all these years.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of redesigning Claude all through the years, or you want to just keep him classic the way he was from the beginning?
Believe it or not, there's still elements of him that are classic, but I did every year I tried to update one thing or another. And those were the things that changed. For instance, like he's got the skulls on the side of the shoulder pads now. Well, that never when I started, I didn't have that. I just had dual colors of the shoulder pads. I had a black pad and I had a red pad, that type of thing. And then I put small skulls like right here, and then those went away. I changed my boots from time to time, depending on what I was doing. If I rode a motorcycle in, I couldn't wear the boots because my boots were stilted. They gave me about an extra 3 inches. So when I'm in the costume, people thought that I was 6'5", 6'6". They thought I was in my 20s, and oddly enough, they thought I was African American. Now, where that came from, I have no idea, other than to say there was one particular game where a girl comes down from the stands and she says, "Are you a white guy? Are you a black guy?" And I said, "Well, I just spoke." I said, "Well, darling," she goes, "Oh my gosh, you're a white guy." She looks up to where she was sitting. She goes, "It's a white guy." Her friend, who was African American, runs down, gets in my face, and says, "No way that butt is on a white guy. Pull your pants down." I, I said, "Look, here, I'll pull down my sleeve." And she goes, "Ah." And the other girl goes, "Pay up, $50." I'm like, there's another one. That was one of the wildest things that people, they didn't know. They didn't realize it. I reached a point in my career where I became a grandfather. I had been in that suit that long. And and it's kind of great to feel like they didn't think anything really changed. Some of them would come up to me at the beginning of every year and say, "Is that you?" That kind of thing. And then they heard me speak and go, "Oh, it's you." Then there were other people who would come up and go, "Is it you?" And they grab my butt and they go, "Oh, it's you." Hey, all right, and then some of them knew me because I was left-handed. I signed my autographs left-handed, or the way I walked, or I mean, all these people would come up to make sure it was me, that they hadn't replaced me with someone else. And that happens a lot in pro sports. Most of the guys are completely anonymous, so they can easily replace him. If contracts run out, the whole thing. They don't want to pay the guy more. Because some mascots made really good money. I mean, by comparison, we're talking about like the Phoenix Suns mascot, the gorilla that did all the dunking and everything. That guy got 100K a year.
Wow.
100K a year. Wrap your head around that. And I'm like, man, I'm in the wrong league. But the average guys in the NFL were making 85K, 100K, and they were getting good money, and the collegiate level, those guys, if you were lucky, like for instance, like I build nitro for UCF. I've been building nitro for over 10 years. Those kids that are in those suits get partial scholarships for that, which I think is fantastic.
Yes.
They get their education and they get to go out and do something really cool. And a lot of the people that start in the college level doing mascots usually graduate into the NFL, the MLB, the NBA. So it's kind of a stepping stone. When I would go and talk to kids in high school, they would their ears would perk up when I talk about different movies and things and the effects world. But they kind of got a little glazy over their eyes when you start talking about mascots in general, because the only thing they know is their mascots in their high schools. And it's just a kid in the suit. I said, guys, mascots can make bank. They can do well. You can get a partial scholarship. You can make a bunch of money. You can get 401ks. Then they started noticing. Then they started listening a little closer.
Mm-hmm.
about what the possibilities are as a mascot. And a lot of people don't think that mascots. Some of them mascots are kind of ridiculed over the years. You see them in movies. Sometimes they're getting pummeled, they're getting beat up, they're getting disrespected in one way or another. Which leads me to the situation with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Now they were going to be playing the Eagles in the Super Bowl, the Dolphins and the Eagles. Well, they wanted the Eagle mascot there to get beat up by Ace. Well, they called the Eagles up. The Eagles said, no, we're not going to let you beat up our mascot on a movie, in a movie. That's not good for us. That's not a good, it's not a good look.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I got the call. And so I ended up building this eagle that he beats up. And I cannot tell you how many jobs I've gotten, clients that remember that movie, remember that right at the end. And they laugh about it every time they see a picture of it. And they go, oh, man, I can't believe you did that. And I would get the gig because of it. So that was really, a fun thing. But mascots really do represent teams. Now, they also represent corporations, they represent theme parks. I mean, where would Mickey Mouse be, at Disney if they didn't have mascots there? I mean, he's worldwide known. There's no doubt about that. So mascots are really important to certain corporations and food franchises and ad agencies and sports teams. And the sports teams, it's an identifiable thing. And I was just lucky enough to come in at a time when the Predators need something. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't know they needed it until I showed them what it was. Then they wanted it. So, here we are talking about it after all these years
Mm-hmm.
still. And, you got all that cool stuff back behind you. I got some of that stuff too.
I
I
know
got
you got more than I got.
I got a few things over the years, and I got actually two versions of Klaw on mannequins over in the sports room. So yeah, Klaw does have different iterations of things that we added and subtracted over the years. But man, we had some fun doing it. I miss it. Every time I turn on the radio and Welcome to the Jungle comes on, you just God, man, there's that song never got old. Never
Mm-hmm.
got old. Fans always wanted to hear it, and they knew what was coming when it was playing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do
uh,
you,
you know,
do
uh,
you have any mask or anything in the room that you're in that you can show?
well, yeah, this one here is probably one of the oldest masks I've made. I built this in 1982, and Empire Strikes Back had just kind of come out, and I thought Yoda was pretty cool. So I decided to go ahead and sculpt one and make it, and I took this to California with me back around, I guess, around '83 or so, and I went to the, you know, effect studios, and I showed them, this, and the guy looks at it and goes, "Well, how long did it take you to sculpt that?" And I said, "About five hours in it, maybe." And his eyes got big, and he goes, "Are you looking for work?" And I'm like, "Well, my partner was with me that I worked with, kind of my boss, and I'm like, well, really, no. What I wanted to know was look at my portfolio, look at this stuff, and if I decide to move to LA, would I find work?" He said, "You wouldn't be out of work a week." And I'm like, "That's good to know." Because behind the door that we were standing by, they were working on Star Trek 3 at the time. And the guy just offered me work. And I was just like, oh, you know. But, LA, it's LA, dude. It's the air, it's the water, it's the earthquakes, it's flash floods, it's the mudslides, it's all of those things, And I had two young daughters, and I was like, I don't know if I want to raise my kids in LA, and I would be working for somebody else, not so much for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I was able to do here,
Mm-hmm.
was to pick and choose some of the things over the years that I got to do, that I had a ton of fun doing. Um, I mean, I've worked on lots of different films. I played a zombie in a film when zombies weren't even cool yet. You know, I did all the zombie makeups. I got to work with the star of the show. was actually a guy by the name of Buster Crabbe. And I know that sounds a little weird, but you wouldn't remember who he was because he's way before your time. He was the original Buck Rogers. He was the original Flash Gordon. He was a Tarzan, and he was an Olympic gold medalist swimmer. And all of those things, he was also my distant cousin. So I got to work with somebody I'd grown up being told about all my life. My first film, I get to do zombies. I played a zombie in the film, and I got to do his makeup and meet him for the first time. So, from 1979 on, I was just trying to find things to do. And, there used to be a pizza place, not Chuck E. Cheese, a place called Showbiz Pizza. You remember Showbiz Pizza?
Mm-hmm.
All the weird animatronic stuff that they had in those pizza parlors. Well, I worked for that company. I was also an instructor in 1984 at Ringling Brothers Clown College. I taught clowns how to make and customize their own noses for their makeups. So, I mean, I got to do all of these wild things and meet all these amazing people. I mean, meeting Ozzy Osbourne, that was a trip in itself. We were doing backstage pyro for him. I did backstage pyro with Rat. I did some custom work for a heavy metal Swiss group called Crocus. Gosh, I mean, I was always doing something and meeting wild and unusual people. And it was always fun. And a lot of it came from the Predators, the
Mm-hmm.
networking that came along with that. People would hand me their business cards all the time and say, "Hey, this is my school. They need a mascot. Come see us." That kind of thing. So, for what it's worth, yeah, arena football wasn't a big paycheck, but it was a fun time, and it was a springboard for a lot of the things I got into afterwards. So, I got to thank the Preds in all its iterations, over the years, for giving me the chance to have some fun
Mm-hmm.
and further my career in many ways that I wouldn't even imagined. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Is there any other Googleable um, mascots or things that you've done through the years, like the eagle mask?
Well, yeah, you can go on YouTube and type in Ace Ventura Eagle mascot, and you'll see, a section that end of the movie in there. There, we did I was part of a documentary in 2004 called Behind the Mask, and so there was some excerpts there that were interviewing me and several other mascots. I mean, Billy the Marlin was in there. I mean, I think the Philly Fanatic was in there. A bunch of guys. And what was happening, it all came kind of an odd way. There was a Major League Baseball game, and the Brewers were playing the Pirates. And the Brewers had a guy on deck, a batter on deck. Seventh inning, they always do something to entertain the fans. You sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," whatever. Well, the Brewers have a race, and it's between four mascots. They're all wieners. It's a brat, it's a hot dog, it's a sausage, and they're running the bases. So they're running the bases, they're rounding third base, and the guy's on deck and he's holding his bat and he just kind of lightly just gives a little tap to one of them, and they trip and fall over. Well, everybody's like gasping. This guy gets fined like $5,000 for doing that, which was kind of funny. But the person in the mascot ended up on Letterman the next night. A 19-year-old girl ends up on Letterman. And that never would have happened any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Never would have happened. So all of a sudden, they're talking about this on Letterman. And then the folks over at the Rolling Stone magazine decide, hey, maybe there's something to this mascot abuse thing. So they write an article about mascot abuse in the Rolling Stone. Then two guys that are filmmakers from Toronto open up the Rolling Stone, see the article, mascots, mascot. Nobody's ever done a documentary. So they decide to do the documentary. It's a 2-hour documentary. Now, whether you can see it in its entirety, I do not know. But there are excerpts on YouTube that we discussed different things, and there's some footage of Klaw signing autographs, you know, doing the thing that Klaw did. And the guys, when Toronto, when they were starting to research it, they said, "There's this guy in Orlando. He talks fireworks, riding motorcycles, signing autographs on ladies' boobs, the whole thing." They said, "We got to have him." So they send a cameraman over, and they follow me around for one game. And it was funny. At the end of the game, we're in the dressing room, and my family comes back, and the cameraman says, "How do you guys keep up with him? He's like chasing a 4-year-old around." You know, I just got to go. He said, "Man, he just wouldn't stop." And I said, "I can't stop. There's too many people in the stands. I'm not going to see them all. I can't meet them all, but I try." And so yeah, those things happen in there. There's Instagrams of Nitro all over for UCF, uh, and I did a mascot for a movie called Bring It On. It was one of the cheerleader movies,
Mhm.
and it was a prairie dog mascot. Um, I've done lots of different characters over the years on the TV show Superboy. There's actually some effects that I did that are on YouTube from different episodes of that because gosh, it was 3 seasons that I was always doing something.
Mhm.
Uh, and when it first came out, it aired on a Sunday. I was constantly working, so I never got to see the shows. So until they finally came out on like DVD less than a year ago, I haven't ever seen the effects,
Mhm.
and they hold up pretty well considering. I mean, we're living in a world of CGI, and the stuff we did back then were all practical effects. So it was just coming into its own. Some of the computer effects. So I was making special devices for the character Superboy to fly in to look like he's flying. Uh,
Mhm.
we were I was building these styrofoam bodies that we rigged with pyrotechnics so they would explode, and all the while I was making like laser guns for like the aliens in the movie in the show. One of the aliens was actually George Lazenby, one of the original James Bonds. He was a guest that week, and so I got to hang out with him, and talk about James Bond and stuff. I mean, there was some really cool. They had episodes of the week where they would have directors of the week, and they would have stars show up of the week. One particular episode of Swamp Thing was being shot at Universal, and I was on the back lot, and I had to go over and see that because I was making some bids on some of their stuff, and it just so happened Tony Dow was the guest director for their show. Tony Dow, you may or may not know, would played Wally on Leave It to Beaver.
Nah, I remember the show.
So Wally is the director. They're shooting live. They're shooting with sound, and every couple of minutes, the helicopter, that tourist helicopter, would fly over and ruin his scene. And I saw Wally cuss up a streak. And I'm like, that was such a weird thing to see. Wally from Leave It to Beaver stomping around and cussing was kind of weird and surreal all at the same time. And those were the kind of things that I was running into. I felt a little like Forrest Gump over the years, where I'd stumble into different things. For instance, I sculpted a 15 and a half inch bronze statue of Pete Rose. So for one summer in '96, I was chasing him on golf courses. I was over at his restaurant in Boca. I was showing him prototypes and getting feedback from him and the whole thing.
Mhm.
And every time I turned around, something weird was happening. With Pete. So I just happened to be there when it happened. Gary Sheffield
Yeah.
had been traded from the Marlins to another team, and didn't make him happy. He was not happy about that, and they were interviewing him on ESPN. And Pete and I just happened to be at Hooters downtown on Church Street, and he was eating a Philly cheesesteak, which he loved Philly cheesesteaks, and him and I were sitting there before an autograph show, and I had picked him up at the airport. We're watching ESPN. He took a bite of his sandwich just about the time that Sheffield admitted that he wasn't playing up to his standards because he wasn't happy with management. And I heard Pete choke. And I looked over at Pete and he got that mouthful down. He goes, did he just admit to throwing a game? Like, you know, you had to have been there to see how silly that looked. And the look on Pete's face when he heard it, it was priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like I said, it was those kind of things that, because of all my connections and all the things that I've done over the years, meeting different people and doing different things, that you just found yourself in these odd moments
Mm-hmm.
where people keep telling me, "Man, you need to write a book. You need to write a book." I'm like, I don't know. I might upset a lot of people. Might embarrass a few too. There's no telling what I would end up writing about because there was so much crazy going on in the '90s and in the early 2000s, and all the things that came after. With the technology and sports, the way it all evolved or devolved in a
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Yeah.
uh, some respects. So,
Yeah.
uh, hey, it is what it is.
Definitely. I can't imagine Preds not having you around. Like, through the years, it's you're just as iconic as some of the players and coaches that everybody thinks about. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
it's
At one point, I told people, I said, Klaw became something I wasn't expecting, and that was he was a talisman. He represent when you saw Klaw, people knew.
Mhm.
They knew who he was. I was at a special event, invited with shades and stuff. We were all invited to go to Disney for the All Star Restaurant, the All Star Cafe. They
Mhm.
had just opened it up. And I mean, athletes, Shaq was there, Andre Agassi was there, Frank Viola was there, Curly Neal was there from the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, they had them all roped off with velvet ropes, the whole thing. We were out front entertaining the fans. Well, they had a stage. They had a bunch of kids up there singing on the stage. One kid yells out, "Go Preds!" I look up there, don't think much about it. It was Justin Timberlake, you know. And In Sync is out there shouting about the Preds.
Mhm.
So here it comes time for Mickey and Minnie and Donald for them to show up. We weren't allowed to be out there anymore. They said, "You guys got to go climb out of your costumes." So we went back, we climbed out of our costumes, and we went into the restaurant. Well, they had a roped off A section, the A-listers, which I just told you who was there, and many, many more. And we were on the other side of that velvet rope. We were in the B section. Me and Pat O'Hara, we were in the B section. And then my friend at the time, my buddy, Mike Stevens, was stuff at the time. He says, "I want to introduce you to somebody." So he takes us over and we get introduced to these kids with weird hair, spiked up and all. And I didn't think anything of it. "Hey guys, how's it going?"
Mhm.
Who knew that they were going to turn into NSYNC? It was just a kind of a weird, awkward kind of thing, and it felt kind of weird that Pat and I would be on the other side of that rope.
Mhm.
When you could reach over and actually touch somebody, that that's an A-lister. But I guess we weren't considered A-listers, even though, let's face it, 19 years straight in the playoffs, there has never been a football team come close to what the Predators achieved in Orlando at all. You can't stack any of them against us. You could stack all of them against us. And we still put together some championship years, whether we won the championship or not. We had some amazing years. And
Mhm.
man, what a great time. And it'd be so much fun to be able to get together some of all the old school fans that were the diehard fans and just thank them for showing up and having a good time because we
Mhm.
were there to ride that tide with them.
Mhm.
And you know that. I mean, come on. You were there almost as long as I was. You were there longer than I was. I
Uh,
mean, I might have been there. You didn't know I was there, but you were there longer than I was. And I would have given anything to see that miracle minute that Barry had done. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Barry
so.
was something else. And watching Herky and all the guys over the years, we had some great players. No
Mhm.
doubt about it. Great players. Fun
Mhm.
stuff. Fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I was
Def-
just a teeny tiny part of it. Just a little part. As I show a championship ring, teeny little part of it.
But again, it wouldn't be the same without you being around. Like it's no Orlando Predators without seeing Claw. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I tell you what, it was weird because what would happen is if somebody didn't see me at a game because I was on the other side, um, or I was just somewhere else where I had to be, and they didn't see me that game, they would come back the next game and go, "Where were you? You know what happened? Oh no, I was there. You just didn't see me that time. I might have been in the VIP section. I might have been upstairs. I might have been, gosh, who knows what I was doing?
Mm-hmm.
Between all the videos that we were shooting, oh, the videos. I mean, those videos in the '90s were something. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of work. A lot of sweat equity was put into that stuff. I mean, it's a miracle. I mean, this day and age, the stuff we got away with on that field was mind blowing. I mean, when you stop and think about it, there were times when we shot videos that I was using real guns. We
Mm-hmm.
had real guns. Some of them were modified to fire blanks, but they were still real guns. They were
Mm-hmm.
part of my effects stuff. And I mean, that we shot this one video where we were going to play the Rattlers, and the Rattlers were the bad guys. Obviously, they were up in the rafters. They had the game ball, the football, and Klaw comes out on the horse. Were you there when the horse event happened?
I don't think I was.
Okay, we shot the videos, and then Claw's coming in on a horse. Okay, Cowboy Claw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they spent an entire week getting the horse used to gunfire. So nothing bad would happen on the field because Claw was going to have a shotgun and he was going to shoot that guy up in the rafters. What we didn't count on was that when the fog back then we had dry ice fog and that filled up the floor. Dry ice fog sits on the floor because obviously because of physics, it just dry ice sits on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
The horse reads that as solid. We had no idea. So the horse, once the fog started flooding the tunnel and out onto the field, the horse was trying to step on what he thought was solid. So the
Mm-hmm.
horse started to spin in the tunnel. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to end well. We finally got the horse out onto the field. We shoot the bad guy. Okay. We have a CPR dummy dressed as the bad guy. We chuck him over the side. He falls 150 feet onto the floor and splat goes into like 5 pieces. People thought that was real. We're firing live ammo and a guy hits the floor and falls into pieces. I
Uh-huh.
mean, imagine what would happen if you tried to do that today.
Nah.
It wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. And we did several things like that where I walked out there and I fired blank firing guns. And no, we never thought, we didn't think anything of it back then. Nowadays, you fire a gun in a crowded place of any sort and people lose their minds,
You're on TMZ.
whether they're real or not.
You're on TMZ and also in jail.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be famous for all the wrong reason. But I can say that we did stuff nobody else had done. I mean, really, that in Orlando, in Central Florida over the years, just things that I got involved with. I mean, I probably painted the very first murals downtown on a building back in the late '70s. I didn't think anything of it. I had a friend who had a club down there, and they wanted some stuff on the side of the building to let people know there was a club there.
Mm-hmm.
I got hired to make it. So I mean, there were those kind of things that happened over the years. When Terminator 2 came out, I got hired to build a haunted house in a nightclub. And in that nightclub, we did a Terminator 2 theme. So, I mean, literally, we were firing blank rounds at patrons walking into the haunted house. And they were so loud, they were setting off car alarms in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And people would pay, come in, go through it all, and come back out and pay again to go through it again. And we were firing blank rounds in there in a haunted house of all things that we created.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that. That
No.
would never happen. Never happen. So, I mean, we were breaking ground where we didn't know we were breaking ground, getting out of trouble before we realized we were in trouble. We
Mm-hmm.
had fire marshals that were saying, "Oh man, that was really cool. You'll never do that again." You know, but that's what we were doing. We were making it up as we went along and trying to have as much fun as we could get away with. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did. Luckily, none of us ended up in jail or dead. I've got all my fingers. In spite of all the pyro of all the years we fired pyro, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still intact in one piece. Thank goodness.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I appreciate uh sitting and talking with you. I know there's so many stories. You might have to do another episode where we talk about the stuff that you can't necessarily get away with nowadays.
If we do a PG version or maybe a leaning towards the R version, I can give you a few more stories that'll be fun.
I know there's so many more. It's just, but yeah. So I definitely appreciate you coming on. And again, the Predators would not be anything. It would not be the same without you. And
No, I tell you what, it was a great ride. It was a lot of fun, and I met a lot of great people.
definitely. So, but definitely look. I want to do an episode. I want to try to get some more different mascots, and kind of tell their stories as well. I've been trying to find Captain Soul and Moxie. I can't
Yeah,
find them. You remember those two?
yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy when I look back on it. I'm like, I'm the guy that survived it all.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I mean, teams came and went, mascots came and went,
Hmm.
and I was the only guy. Now that's simply because I owned the character. The fact that I built him, I owned him, that's how it happened. And there's so many guys in pro sports that cannot say that.
Yeah.
They might have had maybe one or two guys that have had careers as long, if
Hmm.
not a little bit longer. Casey Wolf, the guy who played originally Casey Wolf, him and I probably have been those characters that we were for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I mean, the famous chicken, San Diego chicken, Ted Gianolis, he started that stuff up in I think in the mid to late 70s.
Hmm.
So there's a few of those guys. Maybe there's a couple of them still alive, but that can actually say that they've been around that long and
Hmm.
that they were the only guy. You know, that was
Hmm.
the thing. That was the thing. I wanted to make sure that the fans understood that Klaw was this guy, and it wasn't going to change. You know, I wanted that consistency for the character, and I insisted on that to a
Hmm.
fault because my family's like, man, I mean, how long are you going to keep doing this? And I
Yeah.
said, well, I guess until the suit doesn't fit me or I fall apart.
Definitely.
So yeah, there might be a few guys out there
Yeah.
um, that may still be able to talk about some of the stuff that they did and
Hmm.
stuff that they got away with.
So I'll see if I can get a hold of some of them, but none of them compare to you.
I tell you what, man. I mean, they're an interesting group of guys. Everyone I've ever met over the years, they all have some really cool stories. We all come from different backgrounds and different things. Most of those guys have never built a mascot. Wouldn't even know how to start building a mascot. They were just hired to come in and wear a costume. They may come from a theatrical background. They may come from colleges. I mean, it could just be somebody that just had to be standing in the room where somebody needed somebody in a costume and said, "You're it," you
Yeah.
know, and they built a career on it. So
Definitely.
you know,
Okay.
I've made
All
my
right.
own crazy.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So um I appreciate you coming on, and definitely we'll be talking soon. I might have you
Sure.
come out to my flag football my, my
Well,
program
the
again.
kids were always fun. Kids are
Yeah.
always.
So all right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. I gotta go get my son.
Ah, I got to go. I got to go take a costume part to my embroidery guy. So yeah,
All right. So again,
business doesn't
appreciate you
stop.
coming on, and we'll definitely be in touch.
All right. Take care, Coach.
Yeah.